So, WWE have been listing their best ever WrestleMania matches. You get these lists a lot, normally from YouTubers like Cuckaholic and Twat Culture and WrestleCuck. The WWE's list is different though, you see, because it's the WWE, it's the actual promotion. Not some mark with a Daniel Garcia, garden gnome, by their front door. And at number 10, oh my goodness, with all the classic bouts out there, at number 10 is the WrestleMania 35 stinkeroo between Oindaman, Becky Cringe, Ronda Rousey, and Charlotte Facelift. Because you see, you gotta pretend the women's wrestling is as good as the men's, because otherwise you're a virgin, pal. You live in a basement. You exclusively grow facial hair on your neck. You don't know how grass feels. And most importantly, you're gay.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not at all.
You see, these will be the same marks that throw a fit if someone notes that, say, Seth Rollins has a zesty persona, claiming that pointing that out is homophobia, before showing their true colours when someone else disses one of their precious queens they worship online, sort of in the way the Mayans worshipped the sun back in the old days. Brilliant, just brilliant, fantastic, great. Well, number 10, that's the top 10. This made it into the top 10, with all the WrestleMania matches out there. This match beat out a lot of classics, let me tell you, including the WrestleMania 26 War between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, very good match. It also, speaking of the dead man, beat out his classics with Triple H in the two WrestleManias that followed 26, both excellent, especially the 28 Hell in a Cell match. Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19, look, that match's reputation is a bit marred by Brock Lesnar's terrifying botch near the end. Make no mistake, watch the match leading up to that botch. It's an excellent main event, great technical wrestling, great impact, good psychology, two top talents at the peak of their powers. There's also the hardcore mayhem of Edge versus Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22. The Chicago crowd that night went absolutely ballistic for the match those two put on. A bloodbath for sure, but one with very good storytelling and character work. Again, great match, modern classic, really good. I could go on and on and on and on and on. There are so many matches you could point out in this regard that were better than number 10 but did not make the top 10. But hey, you get the idea. So turn back your clocks to summer 2018. Lovable goof Becky Lynch was a well-liked babyface who was largely, unfortunately, made to look like an absolute chump. WWE, for whatever reason, clearly did not see her on the level of some of their other top female stars at the time, most infamously when Barbie unveiled dolls to commemorate the WrestleMania 32 triple threat. Between her, Sasha Banks, and Charlotte Flair, they didn't make a doll out of Becky Lynch. It was a duo set with just Banks and Flair. And to be clear, I do not collect Barbies, alright? This was made fun of a lot at the time, because poor Becky Lynch just sits there like a third wheel, just awkwardly looking on, left out in the cold. You couldn't help but feel sorry for her. It was really quite disgraceful, quite disrespectful. Why didn't she get a Barbie like the other team? She's just as big a part of the match. It's shameful. Anyway, so heading into SummerSlam 2018, Charlotte Flair was randomly, unjustifiably injected into Becky Lynch's title match with Carmella. Because yes, there was indeed a time when James Ellsworth was a thing, before he turned out to maybe allegedly be the Joe Gatto of independent wrestling. And Carmella, of all people, actually got a belt run off the back of James Ellsworth being a meme at the time. It was just shocking. Terrible time to be a wrestling fan, just awful. Awful stuff. So Becky Lynch's title match, something her fans had actually been wanting to see with her for ages by this point, was now a triple threat. And a triple threat that Charlotte Flair won. How about that? Fans were sick of Charlotte Flair at the time. She was a bit stale. Yes, that's right. This was an issue 7 years ago, already. And the result on that night, Charlotte Flair winning, well, it went over like a wet fart in all white trousers on a summer day. After the match, Flair, she's got the title. She thinks she and Lynch, basically her loser buddy, who her father briefly forced himself on all the way back at Royal Rumble 2016, are still cool, no sweat, we're still buddies. Cheers, Becky. But finally, Becky Lynch, no more Miss Nice Lady, has had enough. No more quinoa and steampunk and lame puns. It's beatdown time. Lynch hands Flair the kind of vicious, hateful beating we'd all just love to give that one so-called friend in our lives, who always desperately tries to one-up us and low-key insult us under the guise of banter or whatever the hell. Fans cheer, they love it, this is great. Unfortunately, WWE, more tone-deaf than Big E jokes from Tony Hinchcliffe, try and present Lynch as a miserable heel who hates the fans. She cuts this bizarre promo. It's not her fault, it's just awful material. Bizarre promo. Saying the fans rejected her. Is that wrong? Barbie rejected her, sure. But the fans, very supportive of Becky Lynch throughout her sustained purgatory run in the undercard. Fortunately, for once, WWE actually took the hint. A pivot is made when it's clear fans would much rather support the colourful, hard-working underdog performer with a distinctive promo style and charm over the giant Nepo baby.
Queen! Nepo Queen!
Who talks like a robotic Karen and has a host of useless transitional title runs to get her closer to her father's actual world titles record. Funny that. Lynch, amazingly, gets to win her feud with Flair, and seemingly move on to better things with the crowd 100% behind her. And these better things include an inter-promotional bout with then Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey at Survivor Series. Unfortunately, tragedy strikes. Wrestling is very dangerous, and when a crazed fan, some monstrous heifer from the front row or something, out to cause trouble, bashes Lynch's face in during a big brawling segment on Raw. Oh, sorry, wait a second. That was Nia Jax. My mistake. Just assaulting poor Lynch the way a crazed fan would. Yeah, not a professional at all, really. I mean, this was intentional, right? I mean, come on. There's no way hitting someone hard enough that you break their face and damage your own hand is a botch. That's malicious. This was a hatchet job. Pure unprofessionalism. I called Charlotte Flair a Nepo baby earlier. Maybe I was unfair. She can actually wrestle. At least she can actually put athletic matches together and not endanger people's well-being needlessly. Nia Jax could have been fired on the spot for what she did to Lynch here, and rightly so. If it wasn't for the fact she's part of the same family tree as a certain Hollywood leading man from Red One. Now, despite the pain and the grogginess and the bleeding, Lynch maintains her composure, consummate professional. This was a whole Raw versus SmackDown thing, and she was leading the charge as the SmackDown women invaded Raw. As she left through the crowd, she turned back and smiled, her face now a bloody mess. And the sickos who cracked one off to Britt Baker bleeding profusely opposite Thunder Rosa a few years later just lost their minds completely. They carried on as if seeing Lynch get horribly injured via an absurd botch from someone who has no business being in that ring at that level was apparently a star-making moment. As if that whole feud with Charlotte Flair that she just had was nothing compared to a cheeky face-smashing. Ridiculous. Lynch was out of Survivor Series, and Flair was brought in to replace her opposite Rousey. And here is where the trouble begins. Charlotte Flair is a lot of things. Good actress, unfortunately, is not one of them. While she's never really landed as a babyface, bar maybe that little friendship angle with Shotzi Blackheart before Flair's knee injury last year, the Nature Daughter has often been effective as a heel. Tall, strong, arrogant, annoying. It's easy to paint other performers as the babyface underdog opposite Charlotte Flair, unless, of course, they're Nia Jax.
This one, and there's the power of Nia Jax. Oh!
As a character, heel Charlotte is best when presented as fairly grounded. An obnoxious prize fighter born into this business who's dominated enough to believe her own hype and look down upon the rest of the division she competes in. Fair enough, logical character. What Charlotte Flair is not is a psycho monster heel. That kind of role is an uphill battle for anyone, anywhere, anytime to pull off. But for every one Cactus Jack or Bruiser Brody or Terry Funk, there's 1,000 Jon Moxleys, Nick Gages, Joker Stings, and for a brief moment here, Charlotte Flair. At the time, Ronda Rousey was undefeated in singles competition in WWE, where she didn't have to worry about legit head kicks and the like. She did have to worry about Alexa Bliss cashing in briefcases, but who cares about that? WWE were clearly saving her first proper job for WrestleMania. At the same time, Charlotte Flair was coming off of a few losses to Becky Lynch, and the promotion's decade-long, or well, several years long at that point, obsession with pushing her ahead of the pack meant WWE simply weren't comfortable having her do a third pay-per-view job in a row. Can't be done. No thank you. So Flair loses her mind during the match and assaults Rousey with a kendo stick for a bizarre DQ finish. Flair's trying to act crazy. She's snapped. She's like Michael Douglas and falling down, trying to sell us on the idea that her inner animal, her dark side, has come out to play. It's theatre kid level acting. And frankly, Ronda Rousey has done little in storyline to warrant prompting this shameful behaviour. And given Flair is normally a competitive freak obsessed with victory at all costs, throwing this bout and the chance to add a big name to her victory's resume is completely illogical. Now, when Ronda Rousey finally committed to getting in the ring in 2018, she was initially greeted with a good deal of fanfare. Audiences loved that finally anyone was getting to beat up Stephanie McMahon for the first time in years. For such a long time, this crazy-eyed menace, who somehow thought freely admitting WWE only do philanthropic stuff for marketing purposes would be a good idea, would embarrass and emasculate male performers, and routinely put down female ones as well, and beyond the occasional accidental bump during whatever Triple H had going on at that year's WrestleMania, McMahon never got any shred of actual comeuppance. And as rightly maligned as late 2010s WWE so often is, this was one thing they got right, with a genuinely very good payoff. Not only was Stephanie McMahon about to meet her match, but Hall of Famer and frequently hard done by Raw General Manager Kurt Angle was about to finally have enough. In 2017, Triple H routinely embarrassed Kurt Angle. He undermined his post, and even attacked him and took him out during that infamously convoluted Men's Survivor Series Raw vs. SmackDown match from 2017. Not a patch on the 2016 one, which is the best Survivor Series match ever, at least in this narrator's opinion. Despite being on the same team, Triple H caused Kurt Angle's elimination, and uses that as an excuse to toy with opponent Shane McMahon before eliminating him as well. It was awful booking, terrible ending. In 2018, Ronda Rousey confirms she's ready to wrestle, when she awkwardly points at the WrestleMania sign for far too long, right after Asuka won the Women's Royal Rumble. Stephanie McMahon soon brings up that time Rousey beat her up at WrestleMania 31, which then went nowhere because Rousey had both a UFC and budding acting career to enjoy. You know, if you can call what she did on camera acting.
These parties bore me to death.
Now, though, with her UFC career over under less than stellar circumstances, and her acting bordering on the Gal Gadot level of bad,
These parties bore me to death.
she was ready to commit to the squared circle. In the meantime, Stephanie McMahon and Triple H are putting Kurt Angle through hell. It's the middle-aged sequel to that love triangle they had back in 2000, only there's no romance this time. Poor Kurt Angle is just a punching bag. And it all comes to a head when Ronda Rousey picks Stephanie McMahon to be her WrestleMania opponent, and Kurt Angle subsequently uses his GM position for once to make it a mixed tag bout with him and Rousey colliding with the dreaded power couple. Angle and Rousey win in a surprisingly action-packed match, during which Rousey throws Triple H around before tapping McMahon out. The WWE's shiny new commodity, the first MMA superstar to join them since Brock Lesnar returned in 2012, gets a cool in-ring debut, whooping a heel no one can stand or even wants to see on the TV, while Kurt Angle, bell to bell, one of the absolute best to ever do it, gets a nice final moment in the sun before WWE fully commit to burying him to hell on the way to his miserable retirement just a year later. Rousey's a star. A babyface star, alright. And then the rest of the year happens. In ring, Ronda Rousey is a legit athlete, a real shooter, and she applies her MMA knowledge well enough to the ring, clubbering opponents with big slams and tearing their arms off with her dreaded armbar. On the mic, however, she's simply too arrogant, and too forced in delivery to come across as likeable or natural. She soon veers into the zero-respect trash-talker vibes of her UFC days, a shtick that ultimately led to many fight fans turning on her after her initial explosion in popularity. By Survivor Series, many fans, living up to Daniel Bryan's infamous criticism of them around that time,
Fickle.
were tired of Ronda Rousey, and heat was creeping into the building whenever she popped on in, and not in a good way. Rousey, never one to keep her feelings to herself, grew visibly frustrated with the largely unwarranted fan rejection that was starting to follow her around. In the meantime, Becky Lynch returned, lost her women's title to Asuka in a match also involving Charlotte Flair. This was after Survivor Series, where it was Rousey who cost them both the match for some payback from both Survivor Series with Flair and the lead-up to it with Lynch. And then the interesting part for Becky Lynch here is she actually loses again at the Royal Rumble in January 2019. The Rumble loss is especially glaring for Lynch as she loses to the Empress of Tomorrow via tap-out, clean as a sheet. While this channel has routinely mocked WWE's attempts to paint Lynch as some women's equivalent of a renegade, hard-as-nails character like Stone Cold Steve Austin, the fact is WWE were attempting to do it, and having her submit was comically counterproductive. Babyface, Rattlesnake, Steve Austin never gave up in the ring. In fact, his original babyface turn in 1997 was solidified when, despite bleeding profusely and having taken a brutal beating, he refused to give up to Bret Hart's sharpshooter at WrestleMania 13, finally passing out from the agony rather than consciously packing it in. That's how you make a big star look tough in defeat. Lynch here was booked to tap willingly when Asuka caught her. Later that night, WWE moved ahead with giving Lynch a surprise Royal Rumble victory, something that went over very well with audiences at the time, it is worth noting. Injuries, title loss, submission, but hope once again, the Rumble victory. Lynch had bounced back from adversity to net herself a title bout at WrestleMania. Now logically, she should pick Asuka to regain her title and get her win back, but let's be real, that's not the money match, fans just watched it. The money match is Ronda Rousey. The big star bout that never was, just a few months prior, was now back in sight, and with a potentially very compelling, very straightforward story to tell. Ronda Rousey starts healing it up. To hell with these fans, I'm an MMA superstar, damn it. I was in Fast and Furious 7, it made over $1 billion, while these marks were hedge-grooming their neckbeards. Boo me! Boo you! Rousey snaps, and starts deliberately injuring her opponents, in kayfabe just to be clear, and trashing the fans on the mic, vowing this belt will stay with her till she retires. No one can touch her. She's an Olympian, damn it. A UFC champion. Who are all these fools to disrespect her? Becky Lynch, meanwhile, goes full babyface and challenges Rousey for WrestleMania, vowing to teach her a lesson in respect and to represent professional wrestling properly against this octagon-based invader. Back in 2017, Tetsuya Naito was a wildly popular tweener character in New Japan. His whole story stemmed from fans rejecting him as a basic babyface. He turned heel, and as a spiteful, slow-moving, lazy scumbag. Naito hilariously found quite a lot of fan support, with many Japanese fans living vicariously through his relaxed, anti-work persona. For a long time, he refused to acknowledge their support. He dismissed it. He was still bitter about when they originally rejected him. After winning the G1 Climax in 2017, however, he finally acknowledged the audience, noting their change of viewpoint on him over the years. Instead of healing it up, instead of trashing them, rejecting them like he had before, he actually accepted his weird new status as an unconventional man of the people, the fans' chosen star, acknowledging his connection with the crowd, and that it actually did mean something to him after all. It was a very nice promo, it was a nice moment, fans were very into it, and he vowed to move on to Wrestle Kingdom, that's the New Japan knockoff of WrestleMania, and become champion with the New Japan fans behind him. Awesome stuff, and we're not going to talk about what happened next with Naito at the time, it's completely irrelevant. I bring this up because it was a storytelling move that, funnily enough, would have been perfect for Becky Lynch back in January and February 2019. Much of her original likability lay more in her infectious enthusiasm and optimism from her original babyface run. A nice, lovable, hard-working underdog, a woman of the people, who fought hard no matter what and fought the right way. And she played that role very well. She was very likable. There was good reason why fans were frustrated at how little of a push she got throughout 2017 and the first half of 2018. As Stone Cold Jane Austen, though, not so much. Playing the renegade, the tough badass, male or female, it's very hard to be all that convincing. She still had the fans behind her, of course, but watching Lynch puff out her upper lip and bob her shoulders as she walked, trying to give us some thug life rude boy vibes, was not good. was not convincing. Her promos, too, struggled, as her attempts at seeming brash and rebellious, this tough lone wolf, just kind of fizzled a bit after a feud with Charlotte Flair wrapped. Now she'd beaten Flair, she was kind of lacking in valid reason to be so harsh and aggressive. Lynch just seemed a bit obnoxious and try-hard. A pivot after the Rumble to fully embrace her fan support could have fixed this, much like it did for Naito, as the now darker anti-hero remembers their babyface roots, remembers who they really are, and bridges their two personas into one. For Lynch, maintaining the lonesome, go-getter gutsiness of her The Man persona, whilst reincorporating the lovable eccentricity of her old steampunk underdog babyface figure, could have landed, and helped further bolster what could have been a very heated feud with a heel Ronda Rousey. Everything I just said, none of that happened. Instead, we got this.
We need Charlotte Flair!
Right. No first-time ever singles bout fans wanted to see for WrestleMania. Oh no. You will get Charlotte third-wheeling this bad boy, and you will like it, Mark. In storyline, after the Rumble, Lynch had some knee problems, and she refused to be examined for that knee injury she picked up at her Royal Rumble winning performance. Due to her insubordinance, she was suspended, in kayfabe. Even after getting cleared, old Vince McMahon himself confirmed that Lynch's original replacement, Charlotte Flair, during her suspension, Charlotte Flair would still be in the match. A whole lot of contrived nonsense went on after that, with Lynch raising hell until Fastlane, where if she beat Flair, she could get back into the match or something. WWE decided to make Ronda Rousey a complete idiot by interfering and attacking Lynch, handing her a DQ finish, and hindering her own chances of retaining the gold by making her WrestleMania title bout a three-way dance. A triple threat. Why? I'll tell you why. Because Charlotte Flair, in many ways, was the female Roman Reigns way back then. You see, at the time, Big Dog Roman was not a culturally relevant hit that led WWE for years like Tribal Chief Roman. Oh no. Big Dog Roman was a bland, inoffensive guy, strictly from the WWE developmental system with family in the business. It's quite common knowledge that Vince McMahon often preferred this. Stars WWE made themselves from scratch over stars they pick up from other promotions and the like. Flair fit this bill exactly like Reigns did, and much like Reigns, fan interest be damned, she was going to get everything. This included many of the promotion's firsts, like the first ever women's Hell in a Cell bout with the legit butch, Sasha Menk, in a bout that prompted many in the stands to just get up and leave. Gotta beat that traffic, I suppose. And it, of course, had to include the first ever women's WrestleMania main event. Fans weren't happy, and the angle itself falls off a cliff soon after, as WWE throw any old thing at the wall to try and get this bout nuclear levels of hype. This included a comical arrest angle, which many fans at the time put some Benny Hill music over, and rightly so, where all three women get in deep doo-doo with the police for raising hell all over the arena. Arrested, trying so hard to be like main event men in the Attitude Era, despite some of the worst trash talk ever committed to camera.
Come on, over here. Come on. Come on.
Kiss me, boy, you little weirdo.
Even Asuka is brought in and essentially sacrificed to the McMahon's deity of choice, which I think we all know who that is, in a bid to get a good buy rate for perhaps the most bloated WrestleMania in the history of the event. A year prior, undefeated Asuka won the Royal Rumble and marched to WrestleMania, where Charlotte Flair got another first, beating Asuka in WWE. The match itself is actually quite good, to be clear. Flair's a strong athlete. Asuka used to be very good at pacing and timing singles bouts. They gel well together and work a fast, aggressive pace, but the result, while surprising, popped Asuka's hype like a pin in a balloon. Finally, near the end of the year, we see her win singles gold on the main roster, and get that surprising clean win over Becky Lynch at the Rumble, perhaps heating her up for whatever the other women's title bout at WrestleMania will be. How naive we were. Yeah, right.
慣れますよ
Asuka loses to Charlotte Flair again. Asuka is sacrificed in the ring, again, so Flair can take the blue women's belt into Mania, and we can have a triple threat for both belts that look exactly the same, bar a slight difference in colour. Have fun on the pre-show, Asuka. Guess it's better than Minoru Suzuki knocking you into next week. So by the time this match begins, and obviously this next criticism is not the women's fault at all, this absolute mess of a WrestleMania show has been droning on for 7 hours. We saw a humiliation ritual of Brock Lesnar to kick things off. We saw Daniel Bryan's excellent heel WWE title run get ended in service of a career undercarder enjoying a flavour of the month push that also gave Bryan one of his 10,000 career concussions. We saw Kurt Angle go through his own humiliation ritual. Actually, there was more than one on this show, when his retirement match was a sub-10-minute embarrassment job to Baron Corbin, who even then was clearly never going to be a main eventer. And we saw a surprisingly awesome grudge match between the old man versions of Triple H and Batista. That last one was good, I liked that. This show ran really long. People were tired right off the bat. These three had an uphill battle ahead of them to maintain the restless audience's interest, and frankly, they did not quite rise to the occasion despite putting some effort in. Triple threats, regardless of who's in them, are often a mess when it comes to format. 3 people actually fighting coherently all at once is very difficult to choreograph and map out convincingly. The solution many professional wrestlers will come to is to make it a singles match. That is, one of the 3 is always incapacitated on the outside of the ring while the other 2 wrestle normally. And the duo in question in the ring will change up a few times in the bout as the performers basically take shifts in the ring. The match itself works a fast pace for the most part, which was desperately needed to try and keep the lethargic crowd engaged. However, there's surprisingly little in regards to genuinely massive spots. Beyond Charlotte Flair knocking out a solid Spanish fly on Becky Lynch off the top rope, and Lynch accidentally lacerating Flair's arm when she hit a top rope leg drop while Flair had Rousey in the figure 8. Flair and Rousey tested kayfabe when Flair audibly brought up some of Rousey's shoot comments on the general fakery of professional wrestling. It's bad enough Rousey was saying this stuff in interviews, yet alone it being injected into the middle of a WrestleMania main event. Rousey and Lynch randomly worked together to get rid of Charlotte, double hip-tossing her into a table in the corner. This moment pretty much felt like fan service, considering all the backlash to Flair being added to the match in the first place. Rousey went for the Piper's Pit, and here's where it really crumbles. Lynch counters into a backslide. The ref counts 3, match over, ding ding ding, despite Rousey's shoulders not being fully pinned for the whole 3 seconds. The audience are confused, and Corey Graves exacerbates the whole situation when he exclaimed that this wasn't how he'd want a show of this magnitude to close out. There's been a botch. You got one of the commentators playing it up. It's really not cool. The finish was out of nowhere, and it went over, like pork chops at a Passover. No build-up, and seemingly designed to protect Rousey from eating a clear-cut loss, then building up Lynch, the winner, no less. Whether it was intentional or a botch, it looks pretty botchy. The pinfall confusion tainted this match the moment they rang the final bell. At the time of the show, some suspected it was an excuse to launch into a Lynch-Rousey singles feud after WrestleMania, but Rousey went on hiatus, and Lynch wound up having to feud with Lacey Evans instead. Following WrestleMania, it turned out that then WWE Universal Champion Seth Rollins, suffering for his partner's gain, was not going to get him more over. Oh no, you see, for just the first month of his title run, Rollins was allowed to be the leading man of Raw, kind of. Enjoying a quick Shield farewell before Dean Ambrose left the promotion to pursue mutilating his forehead full-time. And having a basic feud with AJ Styles that led to a truly excellent title match between them at Money in the Bank 2019. Great stuff. After Rollins and Styles was done though, WWE decided to fully cash in on the common public knowledge that Rollins and Lynch were an item behind the scenes. The result was Rollins playing second fiddle, and often really just being the damsel in distress for Lynch to rescue. That might be good news for the man, but it straight up demanned the actual man of the two of them, with Rollins looking weak and helpless by the standards of a main event champion, especially coming off his ridiculous 2-minute win over Brock Lesnar. This booking setback hindered the Architect's credibility as a babyface hero horribly, and that was a problem Brock Lesnar actually helped improve a bit when he put Rollins over in a proper match at SummerSlam after stealing the belt from him via Money in the Bank shenanigans. But the damage was done, and then horrifyingly exacerbated by Rollins' feud with The Fiend soon after. To this day, 6 years on, Rollins has never been trusted to be the leading babyface again. He's come close in more recent years, but he's still boxed in with his eccentric troublemaker gimmick that has prevented him from getting to be a completely serious performer this whole decade, even when he was world champ again, even when he's heading into main events on WrestleMania Night 1s. And that reboot into this funny Elton John cosplayer gimmick he has now stemmed from the Emasculation Festival that was him hiding behind his woman and then later screaming like a girl in an 80s slasher flick when The Fiend approached him in the ring. He could never be serious again after all of that. Ronda Rousey, meanwhile, took a lengthy hiatus from WWE. When she finally returned, it was for an anemic feud with Charlotte Flair, where Flair, of course, got to be the first one to beat Rousey properly in a WWE singles bout. Rousey's aura and star power stayed home for this second run, and given her very public trashing of the company in the years since, a trilogy of Ronda Rousey WWE runs is comically unlikely for now. And that Rousey-Lynch bout, that women's bout that fans genuinely wanted to see, has still never happened. Never will at this point, I dare say. So overall, this match, not really a seminal, greatest of all time caliber moment for WWE. A trivial moment, in fact, merely the answer to the question, who were the first women to close WrestleMania? Or some question like that. A disappointment that, frankly, considering its goofy comical build, never should have been in the main event slot in the first place. Could have had Rollins and Lesnar do a 15-minute main event, that could have been excellent, but hey, whatever. Many people won't like to hear this next part, I mean, they probably didn't like hearing anything else that's been said so far in this video, but you get the idea. Professional wrestling is an inherently, comically, hyper-masculine medium. That doesn't mean there's not room for female performers and wrestlers, obviously, but it does mean that watching women's performers try and act like the men, whilst delivering poorly delivered promos that break kayfabe so they can pat themselves on the back for making history, and matches that often look noticeably clumsier and less impactful, often with considerably less consistent selling on average, is not the ideal peak of what professional wrestling has and still can be, especially when it comes to the main event of the biggest promotion's biggest event of the year.